Just a 10-minute warning.
And there's our countdown, and we're live. So, hello everyone again. And again, thank you for joining us for our 10th anniversary celebration of TCCA, the Technology and Curriculum Conference of Aldine. We are so excited this year to be able to recognize attendees from all over the world who have registered to join us today. My name is Bill Drake. I'll be your host for this session, along with my co-host, Patsy Matheny. And before I introduce your presenters, I have a few items I'd like to go over with you. The title of this session is Engaging Students of Color Through Technology, and it will end promptly at 2:50 so that we have time to prepare for our next session. If you have questions during the presentation, please enter them in the chat on the right side of your screen, and we will answer as many of them as possible, or our presenters will. Towards the end of the session, I will come back into the feed and give a 10-minute warning so that we have time to wrap up and answer a few of your questions. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Anthony Cobb, Cherise Johnson, and I'm sorry, a third presenter who's joined us and whose name I don't know. So, guys, I'm going to let you introduce your additional presenter, Anthony, Cherise, and special guest. The room is yours.
Hello. Thank you so much for tuning in to Engaging Students of Color Through Technology. My name is Cherise Johnson, and I am a teacher at Benjamin O. Davis High School in the Aldine Independent School District. I currently teach professional communications, and I have been in the field of academia for 7 years.
I am Anthony Cobb. I am also in my 7th year of academics. I teach at George Washington Carver Magnet High School, also in Aldine. I teach professional communication and speech and debate.
And I am Eric McClellan. I'm joining my two colleagues here. I'm a teacher of speech communications at MacArthur Senior High School here in Aldine ISD, where I've been teaching for 20 years, and I'm also currently an adjunct professor at a few of the local community colleges.
And together we are Blacklight Communication Strategies, a communication consulting firm.
And so we're excited about giving you our views, our thoughts, as well as our opinions on engaging students of color through technology.
Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is I have to pose a question. Has anyone ever told you that they don't see color? And if so, how in the world could you process that?
I have heard that several times, and if I could just be frank, and I've heard it from many people from many different areas, many types of people, and I don't like hearing it. I don't buy it, because unless you have the inability to, like, the physical inability to see, you definitely see color. And I think that if you say you don't see color, I think that it can be damage done by saying that you don't see color and moving through the world and through your career and through life without so-called seeing color. Because if you see me, you definitely see me. If I see you, I definitely see you. You know what I mean?
Okay, I agree with that standpoint, but also as an educator, a minority educator myself, I also know the discrimination and the stereotypes that come with being a person of color. So as an educator in my classroom, I try to make sure that I'm more inclusive of all students of all nationalities, all cultures, just to be on the safe side, because I want all of the students to understand that it's a safe classroom environment, most importantly, but so we can all work together as well as build relationships together. So I see the color, but I try not to focus on the color, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. But where I come from, I definitely see the color. But when you say you don't see the color, I think that you kind of tend to lump all the students. If we're talking about education, we tend to lump all the students together as the same, and they're not the same. And that's where I think that damage is done to the student population.
Okay.
I think I'm a little bit of both, in other words, when it comes to this situation. I think that when it comes to seeing students of color, true enough, we do have to. At the same time, we can't have those potential call outs or those stereotypes and things like that. You have to be able to be sure that we know and the students know that it is a safe environment there. But at the same time, we do know that each person is different. We have to let these people know, as the old adage goes, your SKIN is not your SIN.
Right, makes sense. Well, we are going to jump right into our presentation, again, engaging students of color through technology.
So
We'll start off with an overview. So that was our opinion, our perspective on seeing and not seeing color. Then we'll dive right into some advantages as well as the disadvantages. And then of course we will give you a bonus.
Guys, have you, I'm sorry to break in, have you shared your screen with us? Are you trying to show something on screen? If you are,
I'm actually using PowerPoint, so I should be doing Google Slides.
Okay, down at the bottom of the screen, we want to make sure you click share screen
Got it.
and then click on the picture of your screen and click share. And now I can add that to the stream and you're good to go.
All righty, thank you much. Okay, so that's our overview again, seeing color, not seeing color, advantages, disadvantages, and then we're gonna wrap it up with that nice little bonus. So here's something that I like to show. I like to show my students, family, friends, or whatever, just as a kind of a talking point. But so this is something that they show you at the eye doctor to test if you are colorblind or not, right? So let's see if you are clinically colorblind. So in this, I think you can, what number do you see?
Is it just one number or multiple numbers?
I see two numbers.
I see two.
I see two.
Okay.
I know I see a 1 for sure.
Yes.
I don't know if the other, is it a 8 or a 2 or maybe even a 7?
I think a 7 or an 8, I would say.
Okay.
I think I see an 81.
Okay.
Okay. I kind of see an 81 and an 84, but I see things in there. So, okay. So when you go to the eye doctor and he gives this to you, he checks to see if you're colorblind, if you can see or not. So whether you can see the numbers in there or not, they're still there. And so that's my point where I come from when we talk about engaging students of color through technology. Just if we say that we don't acknowledge their color, then we're not acknowledging the student and we're not acknowledging the total child. And one thing that I pride myself on as an educator, where I came up, is teaching the total child and acknowledging the children. And, you know, if the student is missing from my class, when they come back, I like to let them know that they were missed and that they missed something. You definitely missed something, but we also missed you. We missed your vibe. We missed your energy, you know, just something like that. So that's why I like to have this. Just because we don't see the color doesn't mean that they're not there.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you. All right, so this one is about assimilation. So I like this picture as well because you see there's different colors and this one guy or girl is being painted to look like the rest of the people. Is that fair?
Not at all, because what if they don't want to be painted?
Right. What if they are that vibrant student and they actually want to be set apart and they want to stand out through expressions of appearance? Maybe they want to talk and be that person, or maybe they're just different altogether. So you can't really keep everybody boxed in. So they should be allowed to stand out.
Okay, and I agree, they should be allowed to stand out. And so when we talk about engaging them through technology, we want to increase the number of students, especially students of color, who are in the STEM category, who are in the STEM industries. There's only about 30% of our students of color that actually go and major in a STEM field. And we also know that these fields, they do pay, you know, decent money, much like being a teacher. We all know that. But these are good career fields. And a lot of times we have students that feel that they can't do certain things because they don't see people that look like them in those arenas. And then no one's really pushing them. And there has to be a certain push at some point for the student to actually get out there, step out their comfort zone. And just because you've never seen a doctor that looks like you does not mean that you can't be a doctor. And so you don't have to fall into a category of being like everyone else just like you, but you can still stand out and produce something of quality that expresses yourself with something more tangible.
But also, to bridge that learning gap, you would be able to use communication as well as technology. Right now, due to the current pandemic, we've been forced to adapt to a new normal. And so I think as educators or professionals or just in general, we should use the resources that we have at our disposal. So the way that these students would be able to see people that look like them would be through our technology resources. So for example, there are many virtual tours going on. So maybe you could reach out to different people in the STEM field, in the fine arts field, and see if they have time to shoot videos or introduce themselves to your students or make a special TikTok video or things like that to kind of help them. So then you're doing more than one thing. You're meeting more than one objective. You're reaching out to the entire student. You're using technology, and you're also meeting that student where they are, because our students are very knowledgeable in technology and social media, more than we would ever know possibly. So I think by incorporating those resources, that will be a way to help bridge that gap.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. Do you agree?
I totally agree. And I also feel that just as we're wanting our students to learn from us, we at times need to learn from our students,
Right.
because these are the ones, this generation here, they're the ones that have their hands on literally and figuratively when it comes to Snapchatting, when it comes to TikTok, when it comes to being able to go Instagram live to record things in real time, even, using Twitter, and of course for us oldies up here, using Facebook.
Right.
So the students have got their hand on it. And these are the technological aspects that we need to definitely be able to take advantage of and utilize in our classrooms for sure.
So I definitely agree with that, because when we talk about social media and the different platforms that students are using to communicate with one another and communicate with people across the world, and also to entertain themselves, that's what's current and that's what's relevant to them. And so I see the value of it. And I know a lot of times students are told, get off that. You're doing nothing. You're wasting your time. And, that's something that's real to them, and that is their actual world. So I think it is a benefit if we can actually find out what it is that they're looking at on the social media, kind of, like you said, learn from our students and figure out how do we navigate through those things. I know I'm just a little over some technology, so I can push myself a little forward as an adult, as a family member, and as an educator. I can push myself a little bit more and figure out what the students really, really like. And so, again, when we're talking about the students of color, engaging them through technology, that's where I think where we can just say, hey, what is it that you're looking at? Teach me that. And last year we had a district-wide movement of an hour of coding during our third period intervention class.
Right.
And I think it was a good effort. I think it was rooted in good intentions. And I hope it's something that we start up again. And because these students are consumers of this material, and they can actually be producing the material. And I've seen students do a lot of stuff with code and, create robots, create, what is it when you have a character that's not really you as a cartoon? Yes. Bitmojis and stuff like that. I've seen that, and I think that's awesome. And I've watched students do that, and I've learned from them from doing that. And that's kind of awesome because, they create something that kind of looks like them. And I think that that's important. So they're looking at the computer, and they don't always see images that look like them.
Right.
But that is a way that they do get a chance to create a reality for them, or create a sense of belonging. And that's what happens when we give them the opportunity to do that, is they create a sense of belonging, and they see someone in the computer that looks like them. But it shouldn't always have to be something that they have to create. I think the reality should be out there, because the reality is there are a lot of people that look like them out there. And we have to do a little more work to make sure that they see them.
Right. And that kind of brings us, into our next point.
The demographics. So demographics, I like this figure here. So when we look at demographics are very important of anything that we do. It's a part of every industry. It's a part of every school system, whether it's secondary, whether it's post-secondary, whether it's family or neighborhood. Demographics are important because it tells you who resides in this space. So when we talk about classrooms, we have demographics in the classroom, we have demographics in the school. And it is important that we cater to those demographics. It's not that we need to push one demographic aside for another, but we need to make sure that we are catering to the total child and also to the total population, the total demographic. I think that's very important. And so when our students go into things, they should see people that represent them. They should see images that represent them.
And that will just go into the final product, because at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that we are aware of the demographics. We want to be mindful to the experiences that we make for the students. And ultimately, we want them to be able to piece those things together so that after elementary, middle, high school, they're able to go out into the real world and actually be productive citizens. So the things that we are engaging them in, they're able to reel other people in, and they're able to go out and be bigger and better because of that.
I agree with that. And I think that when it comes to demographic awareness, that's almost literally, I guess you could say, pieces of a whole, if you will, just looking at this slide right here, if you think about it. I think another thing also is that we may not always have those specific numbers and statistics in front of us, but the good thing is that our classroom can in fact be a snapshot of the big picture or what's really going on out there. And this can also help us when it comes to planning our day-to-day activities and things like that.
Okay. And I do agree, you said like a snapshot of what's
Right.
really going
Exactly.
on. And yeah, and when you see the thing, I have this analogy that I use. If you get up to a television or a computer screen and you're this far close up on it, you only see a few pixels. You only see dots and some colors. But if you step back, you get to see the whole picture. And that's where I come from with this whole topic of engaging students of color through technology, is looking at the whole picture. And just because things have been a certain way for so long, it doesn't mean that they always have to be. And it doesn't always mean that people mean any harm, but it means that we do have to take a step back. We've been teaching the same way for 100 years. The pandemic happened and we're all virtual, and now the students are coming back. So I think there's something to be learned from that, is that there's always room for improvement. We teach students that, we tell them that there's room for improvement. And this is time where I think we really put our money where our mouth is. I think we really had to do so with the pandemic happening. We really had to put our money where our mouth is, literally as well as figuratively, because some things need to change. And we were able to take a step back because basically, for all intents and purposes, our students didn't go to school for like 6 months.
Right.
Okay. So that gave us 6 months to prepare, to plan, and to make things better, and also to take a step back. And I think it's a disservice when we come back and we don't make a change as far as looking at the demographics of the students and making sure that we're catering to the demographics, because we have to talk about culture, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. So we can look at the statistics that are going on, because you were talking about resources earlier, Cherise. And so some of the resources we have, what would you say are some of our resources?
Maybe for those schools that hit the Title I funding, possibly those would be included in our resources. So maybe the purchasing of equipment for maybe some of the CTE departments, things like that.
Such as things like the calculators for the math department.
Right.
Dictionaries for the English department.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these different things that we can use to help these students. And of course, that can assist with their learning when it comes to various forms of curriculum they're going to be dealing with on a school by school based level, if you will.
Right. And if you mentioned Title I, Title I is a program that exists to improve academic achievement for the disadvantaged. Okay? For these programs to exist, there must be a need. They're not putting Title I programs in schools just for the sake of putting Title I programs in the school.
Right.
And the Title I programs are also for prevention, intervention, for children of youth who are neglected, delinquent, and at risk. So if you have a Title I school, if you're in a Title I school, have a Title I program, that means that you have students that are at risk, delinquent, right? And they need intervention as well as prevention. So how many times do you see a piece of equipment in your school written in a permanent marker that says Title I? I see it all day, every day. So that means these are for the students that are disadvantaged, at risk, in need of intervention, in need of prevention. We've got to get this technology into the hands of the students. And not just in our school or our district. I've seen this for years in multiple districts where it's labeled as Title I and it just sits there. I really do think at Aldine we do a good job of getting the equipment to the students. But again, everybody's not Aldine. We are the 9th largest district in the state of Texas. And so that means we have high standards. But is there room for improvement? There's always room for improvement. And I think that some districts can take a page from what it is that we're doing. But again, if we make it better, I think that's another page that they can take from us, is that we're making it better with what we have.
Yeah, and then as educators, a lot of times we are responsible for those things. So we have to pave the way. We have to be in the trenches, making sure that things are happening. So sometimes, we are known for putting in long hours, getting to work early, staying late, but that's when we can use technology to look for more resources that may be available. And maybe due to the pandemic, maybe there are more resources available. So maybe it's not something tangible at the start, but maybe there are no field trips, but there's virtual tours. So you could still put that in the right place with the right student, and they would still be able to be successful, or it would be beneficial, depending on what it's used for.
Right. So that makes sense, because one reason why field trips and things like that exist is to enrich the students,
right?
To kind of fill in the gap where education and home kind of, don't really necessarily meet. It's kind of like the spackle or the plaster that goes in between, to kind of make them, again, that total child, to make them better stewards of this world and to make them better citizens when they leave our school, because we have to give them a degree saying that you have met all the requirements of the school and you're ready for college. And are they ready for college? If they haven't gone to visit a college, if they've never been to another city or never been to another state or never been to a museum. And unfortunately, for various reasons, students of color actually experience these things a lot less than their counterparts.
Right.
So that's where we come in and try to bridge the gap. And so again, if we take a step back and look at who we're actually serving, that's when I think it becomes real to us, because so many times I think we just have blinders on and we just go forward. And some of us, we look for the 5th and the 20th, that's payday if everyone doesn't know. Sometimes we just look for that, or we just look to sign our contract. And we're signing the contract to teach the total child, to make these children better. And we work in a school district that has Title I funds, and we've got to mobilize those funds. We've got to bring the kids to it. And it's not always the adults' fault. Sometimes we have to really push and bring the students to the technology.
Right.
And one reason, sorry if I'm ranting, but one thing I see about that is it's a little difficult sometimes to bring the students to the technology. That's where we have to fight. But why is it difficult to bring the students to the technology? When I do my PowerPoints, I just really, my soul shook when a student just pointed out to me that all my PowerPoints were of people that didn't look like them. Okay.
Right.
So we have to look at the demographic, and I think it's damning. It's unfair to students when we're just constantly bombarding them with images that have nothing to do with them and that they cannot relate to. And not that it has nothing to do with them, but they can't relate to it. And if you can't get a kid to relate to your content, you've lost them. And you're just like pouring water on a rock and it's just falling off or whatever. So that's where that step back comes in. At look at who you're teaching and figure out how to teach the total child, and not look at them as just a lump, in a sea of students, but look at them and say, this is you, because we all come with different things from our culture. We all have different cultures. And I think that it's very respectful to acknowledge their culture, or give them an opportunity to acknowledge their culture, because our culture is how we perceive things.
I think that, speaking on culture, we've all heard the adage, of course, of the United States being the great American melting pot. But I think that over the years, that has totally changed. And when you put it on a localized type of level, as far as like at a school, we're not a melting pot anymore. I like to think of us as we're a form of gumbo. If you're familiar with gumbo, there are a lot of different ingredients that go in. From, of course, your chicken to your shrimp to your spicy to your bay leaves, and you got to have that nice roux. And so I think that when it comes to looking at these demographics and these numbers and things like that, everyone is there. Everyone almost cross-pollinates on each other, if you will. They're seasoning each other. And then, of course, once you get them together, you let it simmer, you teach them. Before you know it, you've got this bon appetit meal, aka a student learning, a student engaged, a student success story.
Student gumbo. I like that.
I love that analogy.
Yes. So we were talking earlier about statistics, demographics, and percentages and stuff, and how we label students as minority. But then we have to think about it, are we teaching in where our students are the minority? Okay. And we continue to call them minority, we continue to call them at risk. They have all these labels that they have to just sift through each and every day. That does something to a student, for one. But also think about it. Are they really the minority?
When looking at the statistics, I don't think so.
Not at all.
Okay. So that's something that we really have to look at and see the populations that we're really, really teaching. Okay. Because in there, it looks like what the minority is still a minority. Okay. By definition, or by what we've been labeled as.
Right, okay. But not by accuracy.
Not by accuracy.
Right.
Okay. Because you used the term earlier that the minority is what?
The majority.
The minority is the majority.
Right.
So if we look at these statistics here, percentages here, are from the latest material that we pulled, Aldine, the district in which we teach, who produces the nation's best, and we're all in for, our district is 73% Hispanic and 23% African American. Okay. So that means that's who we're teaching. This is our majority. Yet we still call them a minority. And when you call them a minority, it makes them feel like a minority, but then other people begin to pick up on that and still treat them like a minority. So that again means that I'm not looking for students of color to put into my PowerPoints. I am now, because I'm woke, as they say, but it takes a step back. And so that's why I say it's not always harm meant in it. It just takes you taking a step back sometimes. And I definitely have taken a step back, and I see that I'm teaching a majority minority.
Right.
Yes.
And so you have to kind of level up in that aspect. You want them to understand that the expectations are newly set. And they are going to have to rise to the standards as well as the expectations. But again, if the students enjoy certain things, especially technology being one, then those are the ways in which we could increase their engagement and their participation and still work on the total student and then bring productivity and success to the student, the district overall, for everyone.
And the way we make that happen, of course, is like you stated with the technology, but the key is going to be communication.
Right.
We've got to communicate. We have to communicate these aspects and these dynamics to our students, because once they know that we're on board, hopefully they'll follow our lead and they'll be on board.
Right.
Because they will follow us. And that's what I love about our students in Aldine. They will follow us. Of course, you have some outliers, but they will follow us because they trust us and they believe us. But if we keep calling them minority, if we keep pushing them to a side and pushing them into a box, that they believe in us so much, they're going to believe that that's what they are and that's what they're expected to do. And that's when the student disengages, because the expectations have been set low for them. Okay. But when we have high expectations, they rise to it because the student does not want to disappoint you.
That's right.
They don't want to disappoint you. And it just warms my heart so much how hard a student will go to not disappoint you.
Right.
You're not their parent or anything, but we do see them for a lot of hours a day. Even if you just have them for one class period, how many times are you going to see that kid throughout the day?
Or throughout the week.
Or throughout the week.
Right.
Absolutely. They'll move hell and high water to come see you, because you know what? You might be that one bright spot in their day. And we have to realize that. And so again, when we say minority, we have to look at these figures. And unfortunately, statistics do show that minorities do live below the poverty line at a higher rate than their counterparts that are not minorities. So with that comes part of their culture. Where are they going home to? Where are they coming from? Who are they going home to? Okay. How are they being treated when they're at home? How are they eating when they're at home? Are they eating when they're at home? Are they taking care of, siblings or something?
Right.
So it doesn't mean that everyone that we label a minority is going through those things where they have to raise their siblings or where there's no one in the home or whatever, they have bad situations. But statistics do show us that.
Right.
We give them an opportunity to express that and not make them fall into line with everyone else. Give them an opportunity to express themselves, because each home is different.
Right.
Each person is different.
And we can't just throw out a blanket expression like generalizing the whole population,
Right.
because there are few that may be going through those type of situations.
Right. And some that have risen well above that, their families have risen well above that, and and they're trying. So it's an individual thing. And I know with hundreds of students that we have on our roster, it's hard to look at each individual student, but you just give each individual student an opportunity to express themselves.
Definitely.
And when we have Title I funds that are purchasing equipment and technology, we have to bring the kids to the technology. Muhammad, if you don't come to the mountain will come to Muhammad. So the kids, if you don't come to the technology, we've got to bring it to you. And we saw that when COVID hit. They didn't have technology. We brought it to them.
Even more so, you'll have situations where even if we did bring the technology to the students, what about that home life where you might have 3, 4, 5 brothers that have to use one computer a lot of times.
Right.
Sometimes parents didn't know how to, log onto the different platforms for education and things like that. So it was literally almost step-by-step learning and step-by-step instruction that we had to do, and we had to make sure that the students knew how to do it and everything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I always look at it like a triangle. There's the people at school, then there's the children, and then there's the parents. And if we just link up this triangle, we've got a well-oiled system here. And that's the key, is the parents. Engaging the parents. How do you engage a child through technology? Engage the parents through technology.
Right.
Even if you're just emailing the parent and stuff. And I'm sure you guys have had students and their parents who were a little bit confused about Schoology and how things work.
Right.
And if you just spend a little bit of time with them, sometimes they're really appreciative. And it just takes that one thing to unlock for them. They're like, oh, I should have known that all along, because we do overthink things. And as a community, we need to come together and kind of assuage situations and make everybody feel okay.
Right.
Or it's just us taking more time, and it may cause extra work for us, but I know creating the YouTube videos on how to log in or creating videos to show them different things that are going on in the class. Again, finding those apps or the software that make things look attractive. So it is engaging. All of those things are technology resources. So no, it's not the old way or the traditional way, but we kind of have to step outside of what we're used to doing because the students are different. the times are different, and due to the current pandemic, all of that is causing us to just do things differently in general. So we still are able to bring in like the Snapchat filters or the TikTok short, sweet, to the point ideas or presentations just to keep them engaged.
Right, because just because it's uncomfortable to us doesn't mean that it has no validity to it. Just because I don't know how to work Snapchat and TikTok and everything doesn't mean that I should just poo-poo it, because that's unfair. And that's not what I signed my contract for. That's not what they hired me for. They hired me to navigate through these things and, again, teach the total child. And in 2020, we're about to say goodbye to 2020. 2020, we have more technology than I've ever seen in my life. I mean, and that's just the way, things have come with the influx of technology. And so do we have the resources to teach these students, to reteach them, and to reteach ourselves?
Right.
We absolutely do. So again, we're talking about with COVID and some students didn't have technology. We had enough technology for most of our students to get through. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I've never seen that before. I've never seen
so quickly.
Yeah. So really fast.
Yeah. And that's just good. That's the community coming together. And I just really appreciate that. And so that's one way that we engage the kids, is we let them know, one, we trust you with our technology.
Right.
We trust you. And I'm surprised at how well these students are taking care of their technology.
Because they bring them to school every day.
Every day.
The chargers.
Yeah. Yes. I have 3 laptops under my bed that don't work. None of them are Aldines, by the way. But I have 3 laptops under my bed that don't work. I'm horrible with technology, unless it's Aldines. But these students, I'm very impressed with how well they take care of it and stuff. And so I make sure I mention it to them and let them know. And I think that's a really good thing, and it definitely does help. So we were talking about statistics earlier, and we were saying that we don't always have these numbers in front of us. Okay? We're not just discussing all of them, but we just wanted to just show like what we're looking at, and the populations that are so high, yet so underrepresented. And this is not a thing to say poo-poo, woe is us, or, whiny or anything like that. And if I can be a little controversial, I'll just say it reminds me of the Black Lives Matter movement. I'll go on record as saying that I was vehemently opposed to the Black Lives Matter movement until I heard the people who created the Black Lives Matter movement explain that they created it as a container for awareness for other people to do things. And finally, I was like, wow, okay, I understand that. I'm still not going, and wearing stuff and marching or whatever, but I respect what they do. And I can personally see a change, because remember, they're never saying that, no other life matters.
Right.
They're just saying, look at us. We're here and we do matter. And I think that's important, that we remind people that we do matter.
Right. And so with Aldine being the district of innovation and Aldine anywhere, all of these things go hand in hand, because we want to make sure that technology is accessible for staff members and technology is accessible for our students. So that's what we've been able to do. And it's given us the opportunity to become the learners, because we've had to learn, reteach, and strategize ways in which that we were going to keep our content engaging. So, I mean, I just think that that was like a wonderful push, even though it was not so good as far as the pandemic and the circumstances, but it helped us know that we could do it. It was a big challenge. We were able to conquer it, and I think that it's going well.
And I think one thing you have to consider is the fact that our teachers, our educators in general, they were able to be flexible, and they were able to learn new things. They were able to create these virtual offices on their Schoology accounts and different things like that.
Right.
They were able to engage the students. And one of the things I did really, really enjoy was the fact that when it came down to distributing a lot of this technology to the different students in the community, these schools had everything. I speak from MacArthur Senior High School specifically. They had everything together. I mean, they distributed hotspots, Chromebooks, whatever these students needed, they were making sure, and it was all within the ramifications of being safe. I thought that was amazing.
As well as the breakfast meals and the lunch meals.
I consider those as well. That's
right. Because if the child is hungry, they're not going to be engaged. They're not going to be productive. They're not going to want to do anything.
They'll be thinking about it.
Right.
Hungry.
Yeah. So that was a great point.
Absolutely. And so what we're saying, like, we don't always have these figures in front of us, but it is important that, that we do pay attention to them, and that we don't wait for someone to throw this information into our face, that we actually get out there and do the knowledge, find out something about our students. And so I was talking earlier about the students seeing images of themselves. As educators, when we do our planning, it's that step back, and we have to do a little bit hard. We have to work a little bit harder of working harder and looking to find more content that engages our student. Because how many times have you just been frustrated by the lack of engagement by students? It happens. Unfortunately, it happens. So I know I've had an entire class or most of a class fail a quiz or a test or not do an assignment or whatever. And so I had to realize it might not be them.
Right. It could be me.
Yeah, it could be me. Yeah. Oh, it hurts, but I mean, absolutely. Look in the mirror. And I saw some things that I could change. And yes, it hurt my pride, and I was a little bit stubborn. But I realized that, these students didn't do anything to me. They don't mean any harm, but they do deserve a quality education. And they're giving me a paycheck to provide a quality education to these students. And I'm doing them no justice if I can't bring content that's relative to them. And even us, with all the training that we had to do to learn how to go virtual, I'm not that kind of learner. But we have to be so involved and so attentive to the different learning styles of students. And, and that's just where we just had to put that S on our chest or whatever, just like mount up and just go and not say, hey, what about me? What about me? Because if we're educators, we know it's not about us.
Right.
We come last. And that's not a bad thing. And that's one reason why we do it, because we're nurturers and we want to take care of people. And the kids come first because they need to be protected. Until they're able to protect and fend for themselves, that's what we're here for.
And that's what we signed up for.
That's what we signed up for, and we keep signing that contract, and we keep cashing that check.
And so now we just have to continue to finish the product
Yes.
by providing them with resources, engaging them where we can, meeting them where we are, or where they are, I'm sorry, so that they're productive citizens, ultimately.
Right. And so engaging them with technology, showing them a little bit more about coding, showing them a little bit more. We have a young man, Patrick Brown, one of our CTE teachers. And he does an amazing job with teaching our students how to bust down a computer, repair it, and put it back together again.
Yeah.
And in my speech class, I had a student, Gerald Garcia. I'll never forget that. Because he comes in with this big CPU under his arm. I'm like, what are you doing this for? He's like, I'm doing my demonstration speech. And I was like, go ahead then. He sat there, and he twisted and he turned and he pulled and everything, and he took it apart. He told us what the parts were. I still don't understand what they were. And he put it back together again. And that's something that he can do now. I saw him working at Walmart, and they actually have him, working with the technology. They have their own technology department, but they still let this young man kind of tinker with his things because he knows how to make things work or whatever. He knows how that this registry isn't working because somebody sprayed it with too much Windex or something like that. I got to see that, and I just welled with pride to see that, because that shows that we are teaching our students, and we just need a little bit more of that. And by a little bit more, I mean a lot more of that, because that's a career opportunity for them. And so we know that if we can get students more engaged in something like that, they're busy, okay? And they want to keep doing that. So their grades may be better because they're busy and they're in your face asking for help, and you want to help them and you're helping them. The grades are better and they're graduating high school and they have better opportunity for scholarships and to go to college. After they finish college, what do they get? A job with a nice paycheck. And that's where we go into what I call the debate thing, because then they're making a nice salary, a consistent salary. And the more you make, the more the government's going to tax. The more they tax you, the more that money comes back to the roads and our bridges and our schools and our healthcare, our social programs, everything, so that we can lead a better life and also help take care of the most vulnerable among us. And we got to make sure our students know that we're trying to get them to not be the most vulnerable among us. We want them to protect us at some point, pay it back. Pay
That's right. You gotta pay it forward. In other words, what helped you along the way, never forget, never burn those bridges, and always go back and see if you can reinforce those bridges by helping the next one, pulling that next one up. That's what you have to do. You teach these lessons in the class, and I'm sure the students will hopefully understand it, they'll get it, they'll live it, and then they'll do it.
Absolutely. And it's inspiring. I know when we were getting ready to do this and we were doing some research, I was met with a little bit of opposition from people who I don't think had any ill intention, but they said that they didn't think that this was a topic that needed to be covered. And I wasn't offended by it. I wasn't upset. Because I want to do good work and I want to make sure that someone gets something out of it. But I was told that we could do damage by talking about what we're saying, engaging students of color. And so I just said, I could understand your point, but I don't completely buy into it.
Right.
I don't think we're doing damage to it. We're just having people to acknowledge it a little better. And that was my whole point about Black Lives Matter. I can just see that, it doesn't have to be a violent thing, but I can see that people are paying attention to people who don't look like them more. And, because we had an opportunity to stop. With the whole shutdown, people had a lot of time to themselves. Okay? People got things together. People started businesses, you know what I mean? People got married, divorced or whatever, but a lot of things happened. And that is one of the blessings of what happened, in this dastardly situation.
you definitely have to use those lemons and make some lemonade.
Right,
Absolutely.
right, definitely.
So basically what we were talking about was cultural awareness.
Right.
And so culture, that's one of the components as professional communication teachers that we teach every semester. And so one's culture is what basically everything that makes you, you.
Right.
So it's only fair that we allow students to come in with their culture, and not try to erase their culture or make them assimilate into another culture, because they're still learning about their culture.
Right.
They're still learning their history. They're still learning, about their families and stuff. And so it's very important that we just embrace that and teach them how to embrace that.
Guys, just want you to be aware you have 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So let's just wrap up and reiterate some advantages that we talked about of engaging students of color. As I said, it's not something to whine, but it's just something to just say, hey, just take a bigger look at the bigger picture. And, a lot of people say, especially in education, that we do this because we want to help. This is our chance to help. This is our opportunity to help. And if we say it, we need to live it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I think it's all about, like you said earlier, we have to teach that total child.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have the opportunity to establish a rapport, establish these relationships, hopefully for the better. And then, of course, you also definitely have to be able to establish a lot of relationships that we have these long-term impacts.
Right.
That's the key thing right there when I think about the advantages.
Long-term impacts.
And when building rapport and relationships, those are important because once you engage the student and you meet them where they are through technology or whatever it is they have a strong passion for, then they are more than likely to do whatever it is you need them to do. And in other classes, they may not be doing so good, but you can pull them to the side. You can coach them and talk to them and let them know how one class can have a trickle effect and how they need to be productive. And then they're more likely to understand because you have a connection or you build the rapport with them.
That's right.
Trickle down, rapport, and long-term effects. I know we still keep in touch with some of our educators from back in the day.
Yes.
My 5th grade teacher, Mr. Mathis, and my 7th grade assistant principal.
Myself, my elementary school principal, Dr. Albert Lemons, retiring of 55 years in HISD.
I have none that I can be in contact with, sadly.
He's pretty old.
But on the flip side, I am that educator that a lot of my students, they keep in contact with me.
Right.
Well, that's good.
So
For the rapport, the
Exactly.
relationship
You
building.
see how that has changed there? And so I think that's very, very important. And so the trickle down, like we really have to realize that we're doing more than teaching the child. We are teaching the total child, but we're helping them raise a generation.
Right.
Filling in the gaps where parents cannot, you know what I mean? And then the parents are supposed to pick up where we cannot,
Right.
And we've all got to play that role of the spackle and just fill in the gaps and stuff. And it's advantageous. And the energy.
Mm-hmm.
So just like we're talking about, we keep in touch with our older teachers and stuff, and they're keeping in touch with you.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. And that's just positive energy that just keeps resonating. And
That's
if we
right.
just keep it going, like we'll knock this world off its axis. I mean, we don't want to, but I mean, we want to make a big impression.
Because it's contagious.
It is contagious. And we just teach the kids and the students that they can be, as cliche as it sounds, whatever you want to be.
Right, but that has a lot of truth to it because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I still remember in high school wanting to be like my speech teacher, and here I am. So I think when we speak those things into the atmosphere, it breeds life. So I think those are good qualities and things that we have to do with this generation, again, by meeting them through technology. They are the students, the children, the generation of technology. They've been using technology since they were born almost.
Yes. Yep. So they've got the baton, and
Right.
they can do way more because that baton is digital now. Like it's
Definitely.
probably an app on the iPhone or
Right.
something, So
Right.
yes. So those are some advantages. Do y'all have any more advantages? All right, let's wrap it up with some disadvantages of not engaging the student. And I think those are pretty obvious, but I'm not just going to leave it there. It's pretty obvious that we do a disservice to students when we don't pay attention to who they are. Everybody's not the same. And if I can share my story, I know when I went to school, and that's why I keep in touch with these teachers that meant so much to me, and they stood in the gap for me. I wasn't like other students. I didn't understand things. I had ADHD really bad, and my parents never gave me not one lick of medicine. They could have gave me a pill or something, but they did not. And I respect that, but they taught me to fight through it. I had to fight through it. I couldn't go play, during spring break. I had to read a novel, and I had to do a book report on that.
Yeah.
My brother and sister could go play or whatever because they were I'm not going to say normal, but they didn't have the same issues that I had. They knew that they had to keep me engaged. So I had to learn different things. And the one thing is I can do almost anything now, because anytime I had idle hands, my parents put something in my hand, an instrument, a key, a needle and thread. I mean, like the weird things they had me doing, but I can do anything. I can repair a house. I can make you an outfit if you want to, You may not want to wear it, but I can do that.
And you fix food.
And I fix the best food. I do. I do. So the disadvantage is they don't get to develop who they are if we don't engage them. And so technology, like you're talking about food, that was the technology that I had, growing up in the 80s, was a stove and a spoon and a pot, and give a chance, give the student, expose them to a lot of different things.
Right.
And I think that's what we do as educators, expose them to a lot of things. And we don't expose them to a lot, then they're not going to be the good stewards that we hope they will be. They're not going to be well prepared. They're going to remember that. They're going to remember that you didn't prepare them, but the ones that you did prepare, they're definitely going to remember.
Right, agreed. And it'll be very damaging because just as we were speaking about positive energy, negative energy people can feel. So if they feel like you're excluding them, then they're going to shy away from doing your work. They may even skip class. Virtually, they may not log on or complete any assignments. So ultimately, that's not doing anything prosperous from them. They're not growing from that. There's no progress, there's no growth. So yeah, that definitely could be a disadvantage.
And a disadvantage I'm thinking about, of course, as the old adage goes, closed mouths don't get fed, closed minds don't learn.
Right.
So you have to be able to open those minds up so that way they can learn, they can be educated.
Absolutely.
Right.
All right, the last thing we have is a bonus, and that bonus is autonomy. The autonomy as an educator, the autonomy as a parent, as a citizen of this world, to take what resources we have and use them in your own way to train the next generation. It's very important that they leave you better than they came. And if they don't, something is very wrong. But you also give the students autonomy as well to learn and to transform what you've given them into something that's uniquely them.
Right. Agreed.
Yes. All right. So I guess that is it. Y'all have any more bonuses?
No more bonuses.
All right. We thank you all for listening to us. As we said, it was not something where we could learn, but we just are very, very about taking a step back and looking at how we can teach the total child and send these people out into the world as great citizens. Thank you so much for listening. If there's time, we'll take any questions if anyone is interested.
Patsy, do we have any open questions that haven't been addressed?
We do have a couple questions. One question is, any specific advice for teachers of littles?
The little ones?
Young students. Sorry.
Young students. I would say be like a helicopter, but not an overbearing helicopter, because they're developing, and it's really important that you give them an opportunity to just like live out loud. And, we be there to kind of like, give them their boundaries, but live out loud. And I think for me, it gives me so much joy to see students, young students, develop and experience a lot of firsts. And as adults, we've experienced those firsts like a million times. But let the students experience their first and let them teach you something. Even if you've heard it before, give them the opportunity to feel like they've taught you something, and especially about their culture, because they're still learning about their culture. They may have just learned that their grandmother was Cherokee Indian or something like that, but give them an opportunity to talk about that and just watch how their eyes light up. Just amazing at how much love they have. And if you teach young kids, you know how much love they have, and you love them as well.
Great job. It's really loud where Drake is. I know we only have like 1 minute left. You mentioned like making sure to represent different people of color, like on your presentations. Can you give out a quick 1 or 2 more technology tips of how to make sure we show them themselves in technology?
Just by going to like YouTube, if you're going to do a project on a certain idea, make sure that it's representative of all cultures. So, for example, if it's something about a career project, have a variety of different cultures represented so that they can see that, yes, I see somebody that looks like me. So there are different YouTube videos. Even when they're looking at the social media pieces, Twitter will have a variety of different people saying the same thing, but they may represent different ethnic backgrounds and different cultures.
Good.
Even the TikTok videos are the same way.
Very good. Thanks, guys. That was a really
Okay, as you can hear, from the noise in the background, we're starting to wrap up all of our channels for this session. Anthony, Cherise, Eric, we want to thank you for your time and your preparation and a lot of great dialogue. Thanks for sharing your experiences with us and being a part of TCCA. Attendees, the super secret password that you will need to claim your certificate for this session is EMPOWER with a capital E, EMPOWER.
Great secret word for this one.
There you go. It does. It segues perfectly.
Right.
Right.
Again at 3:00. You have about 10 minutes while you're waiting. Please visit some of our vendor sessions. Our vendors are a very important part of TCCA, and we really appreciate them and their support. Thanks for being with us. With that, I'm going to end this broadcast.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Enjoy.